Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel, to kill, period. Win by attrition.
Yeah, dude, I learned that early on. You start recording ASAP because this B-roll, this is vital for the Patreon or the YouTube videos. Like, start recording as soon as you get on and record everything. The slight little hiccups, it's all good. It's all good stuff, man.
Yeah, it's almost one of those. It's almost one of those things too, where like I know you and I had a long discussion last week or whatever before we got here. And it's one of those things too. It's like, it's always great to kind of get a feel for the show and get to know each other. And it gives you ideas for what you're going to talk about. And at the same time, it's like, it's almost one of those human tendencies that it's like, no one else gets the benefit of the first conversation because we don't want to repeat the first conversation because then it's disingenuous. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? On the conversation. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing great. So speaking of, what do you want to speak about today?
No agenda, my man. I always, I caught a little bit of the accent when we spoke last time, but now I definitely hear the Minnesota.
So let me put my coffee down for a second here.
No, it's awesome because one of my best friends on my team early on, he was a kid from the upper PA, and I mean like family, like was just loggers, like 10 brothers, and you know, we talk like this.
so I definitely fall to some of the thick rural accent that comes with, right? So I would say that I have more of a North Dakota accent, and I've kind of melded into a Minnesota accent, and my wife has the Wisconsin accent, and so I can definitely tell the difference between all of them as well. So if you ever need any sort of a subject matter expert for the nuances of upper Midwest accents, I can probably even help you down to specific parts of the state. But it's funny because, occasionally I'll post shorts and things like that on LinkedIn. If I did a podcast with someone or we had a cool talk or LinkedIn Live or whatever. And when people in my network from Minnesota comment on my accent, I know I really have an accent. It's like when the Minnesota people are saying, I'm tuning in to hear your Minnesota accent. It's like, oh, brother, I can't be helped.
Dude, I love it. Especially being able to travel around the world. A lot of times we get this idea that the United States is just bland, carte blanche, like no culture. And you hear that a lot. Oh, there's no culture in the United States. There's no difference. You're all the same. I'm like, nah, no, you're not. We're not. Like there's so many different and the interesting thing about history is like we're all these pockets of different people from Europe settled in the United States, all these different cultures, and they settle in these areas, and then the language takes over, and you have these subtle little differences when you travel from, you get to places like Florida. There's not a lot of different accents here, but you go up to Wisconsin, you go to Minnesota, you go to Michigan, you hear the difference, and it's like, yeah, this is cool.
Well, I think that's a matter of context though as well, and like what's your frame of reference really? Because I'll say my in-laws, like a lot of retired people, moved down to Florida to, live the rest of their life in the sunshine or whatever. So my wife and I get down there a few times a year, and we actually kind of did a circuit here recently. It was like over Christmas and New Year's holiday. So we ended up seeing her folks, and we went from Orlando. We went down and we drove all the way down to the Keys. So we kind of did some different stops, and we did St. Augustine. And I'd say I definitely hear like the Caribbean influence more, and it's probably
Yeah.
Like you get tone deaf to that a little bit, not tone deaf, but just you're in it every day. So it's like you start to not really hear it. You just hear
every day.
the words people are speaking. So I get a little bit of like you hear the Caribbean stuff and like the Cuban stuff and then like the Southern accent. So I cued in on those a little bit more. Whereas when I'm up here in Minnesota, all I hear is the same wah, 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 wah. It's like we're all just saying the words, right? So it's interesting.
We have a beautiful country that if you don't get out and explore it and at least get outside of your comfort zone, like it's easy to just think that it's just so bland. And it's like, dude, it's really not. There's so much to it. It's dynamic. And I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Like, and I've been to a lot of places. Like there's a lot of cool places to visit, man. Like really have a great country. It really, and there's not saying that there aren't things that we need to fix, but it really is cool being able to sit down and get those, like, especially in this sphere where it's just, this will end up on YouTube, but the audio part, being able to sit down and just hear the difference, like that's, to me, it's always part of like that. That's a story that I want to listen to and hear the difference in two people engaging. And I find that it's like, and I think that's why a lot of people enjoy podcasts, like one of the aspects of it. But yeah, dude, friggin', this is rad. I can't believe you've already been talking for a few hours. So I'm going to do my best to try to direct us in some new ground. And I want to take it back to the first thing that I found out about you a year or two ago. It came across my feed. You were training for this 100-miler. And then, you dig deeper into your LinkedIn and you're a mountaineer. Like you left the military and you continue to pursue hard and difficult things. And I think that's one of the key things to success in your life after service. A lot of people want comfort. Like, I just want to be able to just take a load off. And by all means, like it is important to take that break, take that knee, take a security halt, but pause and reflect, but then continue trying to continue trying to do something of that may be impossible. And I want to dive into that, man. Like, what did you know this as part of, who you are to continue to strive for impossible, and what that link is between living a life that is worthy of enjoyment and fulfillment, and it's connected to doing the impossible, or at least things that are very hard to achieve.
So you have to, I think, to have a fulfilled life, and I'm still working on what all the answers are. I think we all are, right? Like, how do we actually get to a point of self-actualization? But you have to approach it as a holistic game. It's like, because the reality is you're not always going to win. You're not always going to feel like you're on top. There's always going to be someone who's better, and there are going to be things that are quote unquote impossible. And some things like truly are impossible. Like, not everything is possible for everyone. I accept that, right? Like we all have our own talents and capacity as well as our own limitations. But, I think that it's important to kind of put yourself out there and experience those harder things or get into those uncomfortable situations in order to know what it feels like when things are hard, so that when there are things that are hard that arise in your life that are outside of your control and outside of your own choosing, you're kind of already inoculated and prepared to deal with those things so that it's not shocking. I talk about this quite a bit. And Danny, I'm sure you've heard the term before, for OBE, or overcome by events, right? And so, our experience in the military, our experience in the corporate world, so we're constantly training and preparing ourselves and honing our skills through degrees, through certifications, through military training, through professional networking groups, through hiring executive coaches. It's this period of preparation so that we're essentially in training exercises, right, to prepare us for war. And so you always hear the saying about, sweat in peace so you don't bleed more, sweat more in peace so you bleed less in war. And it's really kind of true to where you're exposing yourself to these things that truly make you uncomfortable. So then when there are the things that come up that are outside of your own choosing, you don't freak out as much. So you're taking that big wide swath of overcome by events probability or potential that people all have, and you're shrinking that down so that your OBE becomes very small.
It's the power of the modern age of connection.
Yeah, it's the double-edged sword, right? I was having another discussion about that very same thing this morning. It's like, we have all these conveniences of technology and the volume of information at everyone's disposal. So, we were talking before about being able to experience different cultures and speak to people from different places. And, and in a past life, you and I would have never even met, right? So now we're able to sit here and have a conversation. And at the same time, there's kind of the bane that comes along with some of those things too, to where we're inundated with so many radio waves and so much information that, it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And, especially the way that people present themselves. And of course, naturally, we all want to put our best foot forward, right? And we want to say, here are my accomplishments. Here are why my opinions matter. Here's why, I should be a part of your organization or be part of your social circle or all these other things. So we're all putting forth our highlight reels, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it's kind of dastardly in that, when you're having those hard days, whether you're doing hard things or you're just kind of not totally on point that day. And it's like, well, my day is not going well. And then I look at Denny over here and, he's crushing it. And he got 100 likes on his post and he's got a podcast and he's got all of his stuff together. And I'm a loser over here because, you see everyone else's highlight reels, but you have to appreciate that it's peaks and valleys. And, we were kind of talking about that too, that, inoculating yourself in hard things in training and in practice prepares you, and it limits that overcome by events vectors to where everyone can still have a snowball situation and everyone can have a freak out and everyone can get overcome by events. But through that training, physically, through mindset, through preparation, through using appropriate methodologies, leveraging different resources, people who've been there and done that and who have best practices, experts within their field. All of those things are the formula to get that OBE down to where it's very small, to where we all still have it, but it takes a lot more to get my temperature gauge up these days than it used to, because all of those years of experience. And, I'm sure you deal with the same, having gone through extensive training. It takes a lot to get that temperature needle moving, not to say it can't get spiked because you're still a human, but it's how we prepare for that so that when those hard situations not of our own making come up, we're less apt to freak out because we've already learned to cope with those through harder situations of our own choosing, right?
We get really comfortable enduring physical pain, like enduring physical hardships in the military. And that becomes like our gauge to success. Well, I just need to push through this pain. But we don't really work on the mental game aspect of it to a certain degree. And to speak on what you just shared, when you're trying something new, when you transition out of the military and you're chasing this new impossible career field, being an entrepreneur or, being part of this amazing company, you kind of forget that you have to take the same approach that you did training your body to train your mind to not feel like you're failing when you're not meeting the expectations of social media. Oh shit, Jerry got that new Benz, or fucking Steve with that new loaded Hennessy Bronco. Fuck, man, I'm over here with a fucking 2004 Runner. Hey, dude,
I got a hoopty and no one likes. I got a hoopty that I don't even want to post, and nobody likes my content, man. And he's over there with the truck I want. He got 100 likes like a boss. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Meanwhile, what you're not paying attention to is there's like 75 or 100 people that are looking at what you're doing. They're like, oh, man, I wish I could figure it out and be like Steve. He's got it all, man. He's crushing life.
Mm-hmm.
It's death by comparison, death by scrolling. You're killing yourself by just sitting in that space of sadness and engaging with the negativity. Which is the beauty of understanding the importance of focusing on the good.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up this morning. John Kabat-Zinn has this great friggin' quote. If you're still breathing, there's more going right with you than there is wrong. And that's powerful. Because when you're in a firefight or your deployment and you're just hoping and praying to God, like, just let me get through this or let me make it through this trip. Just waking up and being alive is a great thing. But then we come here and we shed that. We get rid of that. Hey, I woke up today. I made it. Another day, another great day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're constantly dealing with a case of the Sunday scaries, a case of Mondays. It's like, it's just a day. It's another day to be excited, to be able to face new things. And it all leads into that mental toughness, being able to harness that same grit, that same intensity that you went into developing your body to be able to go through those rucks, to go through those runs. You get to do it for your mind too. You're not going to go into your next chapter being the greatest. It takes work. It takes skills, but you can get there. You can develop it. You can make a plan of action. And that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. The veteran leaving the military today is more primed for success than our veterans of past generations, but they don't feel that. They don't feel that. They don't see that. And I was right there too. I didn't realize it. But once you're out and you see that you've had all these great, awesome mentors, you made it through numerous deployments, you have resiliency, like, you're going to be okay. And you make it through that. And then you realize, like, why was I so scared? Why was I so willing to give away my power to fear and just feel like I was going to fall apart? And I didn't. And talking to a friend yesterday, I realized, like, oh man, like, we just need more people that are willing to talk, not just coach or sell services, but just really truly mentor and say, like, you're going to be okay.
Right.
It's going to seem scary, but you're going to be okay. And to go back off one of the other things you said earlier, you're inundated with so many options, with so many choices. And I think one of the things that guys and gals need to understand is, like, how to narrow that focus and really hone in on what you really want to do. There's so many things, but you can't pick every option. You can't pick everything. You can't go through the tree of opportunities and just say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Pick everything and be nothing is sometimes what happens as well, right? Because then it falls back into that comparison game. It's like, yes, I know the culture is you're supposed to be on point and crush it in everything you do all day, but then that gets misconstrued for, well, you should be crushing it on all of these things. It's like, but what you have to realize is that a lot of what you see, and especially at the high point markers, those are people who have sacrificed, in a lot of cases, other aspects of their life for exceptional achievement in one area, right? So you can't necessarily say, well, I'm going to go out and be a savage like David Goggins and run 180 miles. At this point in my life, I can get off the couch at any time and run a marathon, but I also don't have 8 hours to train in a day to do that because I have other commitments. Maybe my physiologically, maybe I just don't have that and I never will. I can be the best me I can, but maybe I'm not going to be at that elite level because, people have different physiology, people have different talents, those types of things. And so again, that's kind of the double-edged sword of the information age, really. Like, it allows you and I to sit down and have this conversation with relative ease, whereas, 20 years ago, we would have probably never met and we would have never had this discussion. At the same time, the same thing that brought us together to have a real discussion as two people on different corners of the country is the same things that allows us to see all of these highlight reels of everyone. And if you don't keep it into perspective, it can really drive you mad. It's like, I don't have as much money as this person. I'm not as successful as this person. I'm not as good looking as this person. It's like, yeah, you just got to start working on your own composite and figure out where you can get your wins. And if you want to specialize in areas, then that's fine. But like, make sure it's because of you and not because you're supposed to fit into some sort of a construct or a caricature of what you're supposed to be. And I would say even the military, there's a lot more information now. I think the government and the services are getting better at like transition programs, but it's bureaucracy. So it's inherently always a little bit behind. But there are a lot of those unofficial resources out there, or commercial resources as well. Some things that are free of charge, like two guys who transitioned who are having a discussion. Some of it is services people can pay for, but there's a lot more stuff available to veterans that are transitioning now in terms of information, and also examples of people who have gone into the abyss and broke through the other side. And, now they're productive. They're working for a company. They're doing a job they like. Maybe they're doing something with their military skills. Maybe they pivoted and are doing something entirely new. So it's really that double-edged sword of information and the digital economy that it gives you a lot of stuff, but it also gives you a lot of stuff. So you need to figure out what's important to you and also cut the noise and also keep things into perspective so that you're not driving yourself insane trying to be elite in all these areas that people are dedicating their whole lives to. When you got other stuff going on, you can't be. You just can't. No one's that good.
Yeah, I think know yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Really, like, and it's some people get really annoyed when I bring that up first, and it seems like a slight, like someone sits in front of you and they want the answers to the game, but it's like the reality is you need to know who you are and what you value. What do you really want in life? I know a guy right now that travels around in an awesome RV, does a podcast, does social media stuff, makes money, loves his life.
Mm-hmm.
By no means driving a Lamborghini, by no means, spending nights in penthouse, but he is thrilled. He wakes up and he goes every day. It's a new endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's, one day he's in Montana and next he's on the coast surfing. Like, that's your life. That's what you want. And you chase it and you make that. But it starts with understanding who you are, what you value and what you need in life. But so many of us are letting a social media app or a pitch dictate what our future will be rather than doing the work. And it's scary, but knowing yourself is more important first. That way you can understand, like, oh, okay, I'm not made for this.
Right. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I actually, when I coach clients with like LinkedIn strategy in particular, I talk about this and very condensed down to just the platform itself more so than approaching your whole life that way. But I talk about this often. I said, don't worry about niching down. Yes, they say to niche down and talk about one thing over and over again. Say, here's what I did and it worked. It's like, I didn't care about the niche and I didn't care about storylines. I worked on character development. And that's the getting to know yourself part of it. It's like understanding who you truly are and developing your character, because eventually people will buy into and get invested into you as a character and as a person. And then once you have that investment from your tribe, your audience, your followers, your connections, whatever you want to call it, from these people that are around you and have taken an interest in investing their time into your life in some way, then you have infinite storylines. Then the niches become infinite. So, you hear people talk about your network as your net worth. That's because you've established yourself as someone that they can invest in, they can trust, they feel like they know and that they have a rapport with. And then a lot of different types of opportunities come to you. Like if you ask me, well, what do you do as a business? It's like if I start talking about all the things that I actually do in daily practice, even for money with clients, it's so varied that it'd be like, what kind of business model is that? But it's like, in truth, it's all stuff that falls within my skill sets, but it's stuff that's organically happened because people wanted to work with me. And they said, well, here's some of his capacity that relates to that work. And then in a lot of those cases, as we start on like a specific product or a specific strategy or project or whatever, and in the course of discussion, they're like, we talk about something else. And they're like, well, hey, you could help me with that too. And then you get into cross-selling and upselling. And that's how you end up in situations where maybe you're dealing on an anti-piracy project 1 minute and you're ghostwriting someone's LinkedIn content the next. Now, if I said, hey, here's my business, I'd say, what is wrong with you? And I wouldn't recommend developing such randomness as a business model. But what I did was I spent a lot of years working for other people. I spent a lot of years networking, and even spent a lot of years like refining like my message on the platforms and in the socials and in the digital domain, to now those things just kind of come to me, as opposed to I'm going to do these 10 random things as a service. Right. But I developed the character, and then the opportunities come to you and you kind of figure out. And I'd like to think that's how people find their dream jobs and their dream careers and occupations, or even in their personal life. It's like, just do the things that you value and you'll start to attract that in kind.
100%. That's exactly, and nobody mentors or coaches that in a transition program right now. There's a lot of well-meaning and wonderful, hardworking individuals that will get you ready through resume development, and they'll touch on purpose and passion and mission, but they're always going to try to shuffle you or try to put you in a slot that's already established, a career field, an industry. You hear that a lot. Like, we don't intuitively know industry when we're in the military. We just know MOS. We just know what our job is and what we do. And so the first time we're hearing things about like, oh, human resources, and like, oh yeah, that sounds okay. Maybe I'll study that. And that's important too. That's great stuff. But the reality is, like, why are we channeling people and placing them there before we understand what that person really is like driven and really about? Like, invest time in understanding the person and what they value and what they really enjoy. Because I'm telling you, one of the hardest things to do is to look at this person invested a lot of time and effort and be like, hey, I don't want to do any of these things.
Right.
I will find a way to do what I want to do. And a lot of people will have that repulse and that like, you're not going to make it. Like, please think of this career field or this. And it's like, well, if you want something bad enough and you have the ability to sit down and write it out and just write and develop a framework of what you want to do, surprisingly, you'll figure it out. You will surprisingly sit down and be able to carve out. Maybe it won't be the greatest business plan. Maybe it won't be the greatest, but the next version of it will have a little more speed. You'll have a little more concept behind it, because you'll reach out and talk to people that have done it before, or somebody that's within an industry like what you're trying to do, and you'll get some information. But ultimately, that whole process is way more rewarding than spending the next 6, 7, 8, or fucking 10, 12 years doing something you're not passionate about.
On a pipeline, just because that's where you started. So then you have the sequence of I do the next thing, I do the next thing, I do the next thing. And really in that regard, it's not that. So a lot of the folks that help with military transition, whether they're government employees or they're recently retired people who then their first job in the private sector is, oh, I'm a transition specialist. It's like, what did you really transition to? Right. So I think that's the part that's missing a little bit, because as well as I do, Denny, that it's, you serve in the military, then you get a job as a federal employee in a lot of cases, or people go into law enforcement. Those are kind of a couple big, and it's emerged a bit more to where there's companies like Amazon have like I don't know what they call it, but like some sort of like a pathway program. It's like apprenticeship. So there are some of these things that exist, but in a lot of cases, it's still managed very much like using an Army context is like the branch, like branch career management, where you have your branch manager for your career field. And well, I'm a combat engineer and I'm an E7, or I'm looking for E8. Where do I go? Well, you can go here, here, or here. Like, so you're right. You're talking about, it's like, it's all placement based. Whereas there's kind of this new evolution that's starting, and it's not for everyone. And I would say that even like with entrepreneurship, you have to have a strong stomach for it at times, for sure, because it comes with, it's risk and exposure that you're kind of on your own a lot. And, if you don't have a deal, like if you're not prepared for it, it could be devastating. Right. But at the same time, with this evolution, I see it with military folks who are transitioning now, but they're starting to get into things like social media and content creation, and they're doing podcasts, and they're doing these, solopreneur ventures. And there are even these companies starting that's like specifically for connecting veteran-owned businesses with veteran-owned businesses. And we're no longer just, part of corporate bid process. Well, oh, this is a minority-owned business, or a veteran-owned business, or a woman-owned business, or whatever. Like, we're now starting to interact in our own ecosystem. I think it's really exciting because it's giving folks who are coming up now and starting to see this stuff on YouTube, or listen to the podcasts on Spotify, or getting on social media and seeing, veteran influencers and veteran voices that are figuring out ways to take the skill sets they had, but then do it their own way. So again, like, I use my own example, like, I spent a lot of years on the corporate channel as well. And I followed some of the traditional career paths, and then some of it I did, non-traditionally or unconventionally. But now I'm at a point where I'm just kind of being me, and I'm letting stuff come in. So I had a very baseline business model when I started my business, that I'm going to continue consulting the same things that I consult now. That was the safe part of it, right? It's like, because I still have a wife that I need to keep happy. I need to keep my lights on. We need to have groceries in the refrigerator, that type of stuff. So it's like, I'm going to continue to do that formula that I know works. But then it's like, well, maybe I'll add in some LinkedIn strategy, since I sort of figured it out, right? And then maybe I'll add in some different types of advisory work, or marketing work, or guerrilla marketing, or whatever. And there are things that my business won't necessarily live or die off of it, but I like it and I have an interest in it. And so where it organically falls into place, I can now do these kind of hybrid offerings to different clients, because I've established rapport and trust with them through the deliverables that I provided. And then they tell their friends about it. We talk about it on podcasts. Maybe someone else will hire me, all of these different things. But I think that's really how you come up with a business model or a career plan. If you don't want to work for yourself, either way is fine. But that's how you come up with like a career plan or a business model that truly leads you to that dream job or that dream life. It's not like you construct it and then you execute it. Really, what we're talking about is more like a DevOps or an agile mindset, where you pick some parts that work.
Yes.
And then you iterate and you keep iterating. And then you're adding on features, you're adding on enhancements. And it's now, it's Tyler's a management consultant who management consults for himself now. Yeah, but now I'm doing some LinkedIn strategy. Now I'm doing some securities consulting. Now I'm doing this, that, or whatever.
Yep.
So you start to build out that unicorn job for yourself. But just know that you don't have to come out of the gate as a unicorn and have a unicorn idea. Some of these unicorn ideas started as an offshoot of original idea, and then you seize the opportunity when it's presented.
Hey guys, if you're listening, if you want to look and peek behind the veil of what individuals are doing, simply ask. It's everybody thinks that it's, you have this business plan that you developed and you had somebody that spent hours on it. And dude, there are resources that will help you build a business plan. Like literally there's like friggin' so many programs out there, that will help you. Like what is the one that's Syracuse University, O2O, I believe. I'll put that in the description of this podcast. You can go through the entire short pipeline, learn how to write out a business plan, or you can go online and get a subscription-based business plan generator to help you walk through step by step of developing it. And whatever you're doing, if it's a podcast, well, if you're developing a podcast and you're find that you're really good at production and you enjoy producing and doing the audio editing and doing the marketing behind it, dude, that's a business right there.
Yeah, it's a B2C
I was
business.
doing this thing as a hobby and was just, yeah, I was out there doing this thing, enjoying what I was doing. And next thing you know, somebody hired me to produce their podcast. And I was like, holy shit, I can produce somebody else's show.
Shit just got real, basically.
And then continue. Yes. And it is the proof of the pudding that what you're doing.
Well, and then you have to worry, and then you have to worry about imposter syndrome.
In it.
Then you have to worry about imposter syndrome. It's like, oh shit, am I a phony? Can I really do this? So you're always iterating because you developed an opportunity by getting out there.
Yeah.
You found a talent that you had that, 18-year-old Denny would have never have known. It's like, who would ever thought that now I'm helping people produce podcasts, right? But then at the same time, someone's like, Denny, I want to pay you money for this. Yeah, I'm glad to help. And then as soon as you get off the Zoom call, oh shit, am I going to be a failure? Am I going to screw their stuff up?
Dude, 100 and fucking percent. I will tell you right now, the first time, shout out to Dan, we sit down, we have a conversation and he hits me back up. He's like, yeah, man, I want you to run the podcast. I didn't negotiate salary. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I just knew that I had somebody that wanted me to produce their podcast.
Let's go.
And that first year I was like, I fucking did it. Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And then after I got done celebrating, I was like, wait, shit. I don't know how much to charge you for this. that's the journey. That's the fucking journey.
Yes.
And the next year you come to the table understanding how much your production time costs and the value of it. And you're able to negotiate. And then when you take on a new client, you go there understanding that it was funny. I searched and I talked to other producers and I remember somebody saying, it's like, this is if you don't charge something reasonable, you're doing a disservice to every other producer out there. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, oh God, I've already screwed up step one.
Right.
But it's those awesome first mistakes that you're going to look back on and say, you know what? Proof's in the pudding, and everybody out there can give you their input and they can shit on your dream and they can joke about how they could do it better. But you know what? Don't listen to it because you're fucking doing it. You're doing it, and somebody's now paying you to do it, and you're giving advice to others, and you're giving equipment tips, and you're helping, and you're uplifting your community and the people that are asking for help, and you're being of service to others. That's proof in the pudding. You're fucking doing it. If you're out there and you're a creator, whether it's marketing on social media and you're trying to help small businesses and you're struggling because you don't think you're actually doing something, let me tell you, you're doing it. It's not going to be the same next week, and it's going to get better, and you're going to get bigger, and you're going to fucking get to the point where you're going to say, I fucking did it. It just takes work and being committed to your fucking dream for 20 years or more. Some individuals stayed longer. You were committed to somebody else's mission, somebody else's vision, and somebody else's commander's intent. Now it's yours. Be willing to put the money on you. Bet on you. Always bet on yourself.
And here's the big secret too that I learned. And, through some of that consistency that you were talking about, I mean, I started content creating 3.5 years ago, something like that. And for a long time I bombed and I wasn't doing it right. And believe me, I've been laughed at, I've been trolled, I've been all sorts of things, but I can tell you now that 3 years later, I have access to a lot of amazing people, much like yourself, right? I'm able to come on shows. I'm able to reach out to executives in large organizations. And because they see my selfie face every single day, people are willing to pick up the phone. And what may seem like an exercise in the absurd at times, I'm able to connect with people to directly facilitate work with the clients I'm working with and pull people together in task force purely because they see my face every day. And they know that even if some of it is comedic or ridiculous at times, they know I'm not going anywhere. And they also know what my background is because I've been there so long that they've gone back and checked. But one of the biggest things that I found in having that level of access now is I've sat down and talked with world record holders. I've sat down and talked with ultra high net worth individuals. I've talked with Amazon bestsellers for books. I've talked with physicians, attorneys, special operators, social media influencers that are huge influencers. And the thing that they all have in common is that nobody's got it figured out. Everyone's got daily trials and tribulations, and you can get on a call, a Zoom call or a podcast with the biggest rock star that you and everyone else looks up to. And before we hit record, they're probably going to talk about how their car broke down. So they have to cut at this time because they have to go pick their car up. And that's the only time their husband or wife can give. So everyone's got the real life happen stuff that isn't the highlight reel. And so everyone listening to this just needs to keep that in mind that, again, even though you see these elite people out there at the apex and at the tip of the spear, what they're doing, they're real people just trying to get through their day and keep the people around them happy. And so you just have to remember that nobody's crushing it all the time. And that, outside, past this digital facade of all of our highlight reels, we're all just people trying to do the best that we can. And hopefully our intent is good and we're trying to help other people out along the way.
That is the common humanity thing. And this month's key thing, common humanity. Be willing to see the human being. Mm-hmm. Be willing to see past. You can swipe and you can scroll all day and be defeated, or you can realize that everybody you're seeing is a human being. Mm-hmm. Everybody you're encountering and engaging with, like, they're just a human being trying something. And if you want to achieve the same or want inside information on how to do a certain thing, reach out, talk to people. Well, it's one of the greatest things about LinkedIn. I have never gone on LinkedIn and reached out to somebody and been treated in a negative way. Every single person I've ever approached on LinkedIn has been immensely kind, compassionate, caring, and been willing to engage. Even if it's a no, they're willing to say, hey, I'm not available, but hey, I appreciate what you're doing, and reach out maybe 3 months. Mm-hmm. Like, we have this, and I had the understanding that it was going to be this horrible exercise in complete and total failure reaching out. And it was the complete opposite. And every time I talk to somebody and tell them, like, hey, if you want to do X, Y, and Z, if you're interested in psychedelics and research and you're interested in all these different fields, find the individuals, Google them, find them. And if they have a LinkedIn, hit them up on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Doctors, professionals, all of them have been willing to sit down and engage and talk. And all it takes is being willing to just send that initial warm, like, hey, how's it going? I'm a human being wanting to know more about you and your career field. Would you be willing to talk?
I see that you're also I see that you're also a human. Would you like to interact as humans at some point, basically?
Exactly. Hello there, human friend.
Although maybe that's not the best DM strategy, though. Hello, human. I'm a human. Would you like to be a human? Although I would be more apt to reply to that than maybe some of like the openers that's clearly just going to be a pitch slap. It's like when someone says, hi.
Yeah.
What's your biggest dream right now? Get out of here. It's like nobody opens like that. Oh, let me walk right into this. Oh, I really wish my business was doing better. And I bet you can help me with that. Just reach out to me like a human, right?
Yeah. I am way too kind and way too open to connect and talk. And it's been abused several times. It's the only negative thing, because I genuinely want to talk and engage with anybody. But then you go through these deep levels of scheduling a talk and this virtual assistant and this virtual assistant. And then it's nothing but a weird sales pitch. And it's like, man, like, I just wanted to talk to a human being. You're trying to sell me on something that I don't need. and the elaborate gaming of this, it's like, oh man, like this is worse than spam. This is absolutely worse than spam.
Right, because there's time consumption on it. Then you go through this 10-part dance in the LinkedIn DMs where someone then at the end of it, they paste in, here's this thing with my link if you'd like to enhance everything about everything that you ever were. Yeah. It's like, I knew this from the beginning, but I was trying to be polite here. And now I just spent 4 or 5 minutes that I could have been talking to Denny instead. But I think that, well, that kind of goes back to the earlier point that with all this information, things have gotten to be stuff super accessible, and we have access to all of this knowledge that we never had with unprecedented speed.
Yeah. At
the same time, we have access and everyone has access to us. So you have to get pretty deliberate about what you'll commit to and where you'll cut things off. And so, I mean, so there are times that, I'll either give I'm not interested right away. And in some cases, if I know it's just an opener, I might ignore it. I don't like to ignore people ever. But when I know that there's a construct at the start, and it's just to take me through the 10-step dance to use the sales tips that someone just taught them to try and sell me, it's like, I just don't have time for it. And it's not a commentary on the person, but they already came to the discussion not interested in me as a character, and maybe not even knowing who they are as a character. We talked about character development. They came to it with a set storyline that they wanted to play out. And it's like, unfortunately, I don't want to be a character in that play. I'm doing another thing right now. If you'd like to talk about how we can help each other and develop something together, that's a little bit different conversation. So that's kind of the double-edged sword there, is that, a lot of people have access, and you do, but a lot of people don't understand their character. They're just trying to sell a niche or a storyline. And where that really comes in too is, and this kind of tying it back to like military audience and people who are transitioning, is that a lot of folks probably didn't do a lot with social media or personal branding and stuff because you didn't need to as much in the military. You got your rank, you got your MOS or your job. It's fairly, not that it's not political, it is a little bit, but it's a better example of a meritocracy than a lot of other corporations, I would say. The military is. So if you do certain things, you hit certain markers that are defined, you promote, you get more money, you do all those things, right? But it's kind of a more sheltered version of it. So you have people then that they don't necessarily need to brand themselves as much, so they don't. And they're not maybe on the socials or kind of exploring that just because of OPSEC, and just culturally, it's still better to be conservative. So then when you get out, all of a sudden, you're not in the same meritocracy. It's certainly your network works at that point, and you're out of that system where you just do the next step to the next step to the next step, and you work hard and you hit the markers you promote. It's not like that anymore. You have to politic as much as anything. You have to network your tail off and figure out who you want to work with and leverage those relationships and help people so that they help you, right? And then on the social media end too, it's like you don't know how to promote yourself, but then, okay, you start doing it. And that's where this last part comes in, is that you have to figure out how it's going to scale. Because Danny, you're a kind person, you're a curious person, you have a thirst for information, you have a thirst for knowledge and connecting people. But at the same time, there are going to be people that abuse that. And if you just say, well, I want to be equally kind to everybody and equally accessible to everyone, you're going to end up with a calendar full of people who want to take advantage of that. And then you're not reaching the people where you can have the most impact. So there you kind of have to start to triage some things and jettison some things to keep your weight down so you can stay on mission, right? Because otherwise you get overweight and you're bogged down with all this stuff that really doesn't serve you anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's learning the power of no, and balancing that and understanding like it's okay. It's okay to say no to things. It's okay to say no, and you can still be a kind, compassionate, great human being and valuing your time, because at the end of the day, work is not your entire life. It's this much.
Right.
Work is that thing that you do to fund all the other things, and you still have to have a life. You still have to be able to enjoy and thrive in your life.
Mhm.
Like, what are some of the things that you do? How do you manage that recharge? How do you recharge the Tyler batteries and keep going?
So I didn't do a very good job of it for a long time. So, and, for context for everyone listening, my military transition was kind of a hybrid version of it because, I went on active duty and did 4 years of active duty. And then, I was going to go into the National Guard and go to school. Of course, I came in pre 9/11. And by the time I was exiting from the active component, it was post 9/11 and deployments were picking up and training and PME and all that other stuff. So for all intents and purposes, I would say I was active in the sense that I did it pretty much full time between deployments and training opportunities, PME and all this stuff for like the first 9 years of my career. And then I became a little bit more of a National Guard reservist where the op tempo slowed down a little bit. And then I got into paramilitary work. So I kind of split my time and then eventually into corporate security work. And that's kind of how I got into like the corporate ladder. And I would say for me, it was at a point where I kind of attained a level of rank in the military that I wanted, and I was happy with that. And so I was going to ride out my career and kind of become the senior NCO mentor and stuff and hand off the torch and then quietly exit and retire. But then I was starting that new journey where it was, again, trying to get promoted. It's like, I want to get into this billet and do this role so I can promote, do all these different things. So I was repeating that cycle of what had happened, that how I approached my military career. And I found success in doing that as well. But then I got into like my mid 30s and I looked in the mirror and I realized I'm nothing but my jobs, right? I had my military career and then I had my corporate career. And it's like, those are the two biggest, differentiate or not even differentiators, distinguishing factors of me. If I was to tell someone, who am I and what do I do? But I wasn't really doing anything for myself. And it was reaching a point where because I didn't have any outlets for those reboots or those resets or those refreshes for me personally, I found that I started to get more judgmental of other people that I worked with, like if they screwed stuff up, as opposed to being helpful. And then also, I would say, what's the best way to put it? In some cases, envious if other people had what I didn't. Like, say there was a promotion and someone else got it, and I didn't. So then, I find myself bad mouthing the person. Well, they're not really that good, and I'm better, and all this stuff. And it's just kind of a lot of stuff that I didn't really like. And it's like, I know this isn't me. I know this isn't what I like, and I'm finding that I'm doing it. And it wasn't because I was getting wronged professionally or anything like that. It was because I didn't have any outlets. And so I was trying to fulfill my whole life with something that maybe should have been 50% of my life. And it left me with a void then when anything went wrong with that, because my output portfolio was not diversified. All my output was going towards work stuff. So if there was a disruption there and that stock market crashed, I didn't have stock in anything else. So then I'm destitute and broke every time something happens that goes wrong for me professionally. And so you're on those extreme peaks and valleys. So in my mid 30s, and I started mountain climbing. I started gardening. I started endurance running. So a lot of these things were extensions of stuff we'd done in the military and we're kind of trained for. Although the Army has a way of taking the fun out of cool stuff, as you know. And so I took an opinion for a long time that, well, I don't like camping because the Army ruined it for me, or I don't want to go out hiking because the Army ruined it for me, or I don't want to go paddling in the canoe because the Army ruined all that stuff for me. But then, I kind of put that to the side and quit pretending or thinking that I understood it all and had it all figured out. And I started doing some more of those things. Like, this is sort of like what I did before, but now it's fun because I'm calling the shots on when I start, when I stop, where I do it and all of that. And I love the Army for everything it gave me, but I didn't have the Army sucking the fun out of shit that should have been fun for me. And so I'm like, damn, I really do like a lot of stuff. And here I thought that there was something wrong with me, that I didn't know how to hobby and I didn't know how to have those personal resets, those productive professionally conducive hobbies that also help me personally. It's like I came to realize, damn, I'm actually interested in a lot of stuff. One of my projects right now is I'm I'm tying a gill net, basically. Just on a whim, I decided I'm going to get the roll of 550 cord, and I've seen it on Alone or whatever. And so I set it up outside and got on the YouTube videos to get a little bit of a hip pocket training from the old YouTube on how to do it. And it's not perfect, but it's coming along and it's so therapeutic. But I like to just find those different things that are even like novelties, and maybe I'll only do it once, but it's like, well, why would you do it? What are you going to use it for? I may not use it for anything, but I just want to know that I can.
Freedom of having a thought, a concept of something you want to try, and then doing it. It's so rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
We get told we can't do something, or something's not for you. One of the greatest things you can do is just listen and follow that urge, follow that drive to try something new. Who cares if it's not traditionally something that you're supposed to do? Figure it out. If it's within like one of the greatest joys in life is being able to sit down and just engage with a craft, a hobby, something that is uniquely rewarding for you.
Mm-hmm.
And plus and bonus points if you can do it outside, because we spend way too much time indoors. I get it. Video games are fun, but grab a camera, grab a notebook, go outside, journal, write poetry, take photos, do mindful photography, do mindful walking outside. Just connect with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only relationship you're going to have for the rest of your life. The relationship with yourself. Like, be able to nurture and give back to yourself by doing something that is just uniquely enjoyable to you. And who cares if other people aren't into it? All that matters is that you are into it and you enjoy it. I got a friend that has recently picked up watchmaking and fixing watches, and watching his process and he's been talking about this forever. We literally sat on the phone for over an hour, and he was telling me the intricate details of the watch from a movie that we enjoy. I forget the name of it. Steve Zissou. It's one of those quirky movies with Bill Murray. I can't remember it. Forget.
Is there any other kind with Bill Murray?
Those are the deep details of right. Oh, the Aquatic Life. The Aquatic Life. It's one of those Anderson films, but he sits down and we're on the phone, and he's breaking down the details of all these watches. I'm like, dude, like, get into this hobby, figure out how you can just start taking one of your old watches apart, seeing how it works. And now he's doing it, and he's putting the entire journey online so that people can see it and be able to appreciate what he's doing with these timepieces. And that's beautiful. That's something that wasn't given to him by an organization that said, here, study this. No, he found an interest in it, and now he's doing it. And it's beautiful to watch, because when you're able to see your friends positively consumed by something that they love and truly enjoy, there's nothing more rewarding, because you know how hard it is to develop that for yourself.
Yeah. I think people cue in on that. And so, like, when you're talking about your friend discussing the intricacies, and it's like, you probably heard more about the workings and dynamics of watches than you ever wanted to know. But the fact that you could hear the passion and the curiosity and the interest in his voice, and that really resonates with people, even if, and then when you have the ability to share that with the world, it's like, again, everyone's not going to be interested in that principal effort necessarily, but I think a lot of people really, one, they can feel the passion that you feel for it and trying something. And so, like, I post a lot about gardening stuff and composting and like my sustainability stuff, particularly in the summertime, just because the season kind of lends itself to it. And while I know everyone who likes that sort of stuff isn't necessarily going to go out and plant a garden, they might say, well, yeah, I love going to the farmer's market, or I started knitting, or I started doing watchmaking, or whatever their thing is. So for a lot of people, it's not the principal effort of me trying to convert everyone into having a victory garden and composting and living off the land. But what it is saying is, like, I was a dude in my mid 30s that was burnt out, envious a lot of other people that have more success than me and didn't really understand why, because I'm a high performer and I'm supposed to be crushing. It's like, I didn't have any outlets. So then I got some outlets, and now, pushing 10 years later now in my mid 40s, it's like stuff's really starting to click, man. It's like, I feel more holistic. I'm more in tune with the seasons, and it helps me to work with other people better, because I'm appreciative that we're all out here just trying to find our process, and we've all got these different priorities and different principal efforts, but it's about kind of that evolution, especially when folks start to get about our age. That's when people take a look in the mirror, and it's like, okay, I've got all these things that I've done, and all these pieces of paper that represent who I am or who I was and what I've done, but it's like there's more to this picture than that. And it's like,
Yes.
What are you going to do now to start acknowledging that part of your person, outside of career achievement, professional accomplishments? And again, if you look at the hierarchy of needs pyramid, you have your basic physiological needs. Do you have enough to eat? Do you have a place to sleep? Then do you have shelter and safety and security? And then from that, you start to get into your relationships, and then you start to get into your STEAM, and that's like your professional achievements and accomplishments. And, you set out to be a senior vice president or whatever, or you wanted to be a sergeant major, or you wanted to be special operations or whatever. So you achieve that. But then a lot of people stop there. And that's why a lot of people never truly reach self-actualization. It's like, those are like the Barney style steps that are laid out. It's like, here are these quantifiable objectives that we know what the requirements are, and then we work towards those things. And as long as we hit those, we make it. But that one right on the top that rounds out the person is that self-actualization. That's a lot more subjective and a lot more ambiguous. And you really just kind of have to dive in and start flowing to understand what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. We could go on a whole nother hour.
Well, I could talk about self-actualization for 10 hours and probably not solve the problem, Danny.
No, it's one of the things. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I think we'll have to sit down, maybe do another part 2, because I think that there's help with psychedelics in that endeavor.
Psychedelics, really, mindset stuff, breath work. There's just a lot of different avenues. I'll share this with you, and I know that it's weird, but I haven't posted this on the socials or anything. So this is a quartz crystal, right? And it's not a fancy one from a Reiki store or anything like that. I happened to be out in my gardening one day. And whenever I come across rocks and they're like, I want my garden to be completely rock free. I know that that's never going to happen, but I try my damnedest. It's the unattainable goal. But I found this, and it was dirty, and I had a fascination with these as kids as well. But I'm like, I really like this thing. So I brought it in the house, and I found an old toothbrush and I brushed it up all nice. And I even showed it to my wife, and she was just kind of entertained that I was like a little kid excited about this rock. Right. And I brought it to her, and she even found a meme online saying, are you the adult little kid that's still fascinated by rocks? And she said, it's like, well, apparently you're married to a 44-year-old man child. But so this thing sits on my desk, and I have a few small things like that. I have some shells that I picked from the ocean or whatever, but sometimes I'll even hold that to my temple. Maybe it's purely placebo effect, but I don't think so. Like, because quartz actually retains energy. Like, and I'm sure that your friend who's in watchmaking will tell you the same things. Like quartz holds and retains energy as a natural battery. So I'm telling you, man, when I put that to my temple, sometimes it changes my energy a little bit. And I'm sure that if there's someone listening to this episode that talks about Reiki, though, they're going to write in and educate a couple of cavemen on exactly what it is and why it works. But I think that it's okay to kind of embrace some of those things that are maybe a little bit on the woo-woo side, just to see what works for you. Because in terms of mindfulness, and, you know, Danny, we talked about it offline before about different meditation techniques and breath work. There's a lot of human stuff out there and a lot of endogenous medicine and stuff even within us that over the passage of time and through modern convenience, we've lost touch with some of those skill sets or the knowledge on how to access those things. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can really get back through the use of different forms of medicines and treatments, as well as different sorts of mindset and meditation techniques that it's good for people to know that it's out there and have an open enough mind to try some things. And some of it might actually work for you. And if it doesn't, that's fine. Just jettison it. Or if it works, stow it and put it into the kit and carry on.
Yeah. And that's the same reason why mindfulness has become such a big part of my life. And when I was first introduced to it, I said, hell no. I was very, very hostile towards it. Mm-hmm. And then when I stopped, got over myself and was desperately looking for something that could help, it changed my life. Mm-hmm. Now I teach it.
Yeah.
And it's that type of surrendering to understanding that I don't know it all. And if this avenue of approach may lead me to some answers, well, I'm going to follow it. And it led me to so many great things. Mm-hmm. Just following that one little question, could this help me? And allowing myself to get rid of that ego in that moment and practice it and learning that, oh shit, like I've been breathing through my nose for friggin' years. I've been pausing, email breathing, and not, there's a lot of things I don't deal with anymore. Like I don't have to wear a CPAP machine. And that's 100% attributable to mindfulness because I started breathing right. I started focusing on the breath and bringing awareness to like the little things in my body that I wasn't before. Like, and it, from that one little decision to focus on this and try to learn this and follow it and be a student of it, it led me to follow other things. It brought me closer to my faith. It brought me to be more disciplined, be more present, focused. And it can do that for you. And so many things can do that for you. If it's not mindfulness, it can be something else. But it's the mentality of understanding that you don't know everything. Be willing to be a student. Be willing to have beginner's mind.
Poet warrior, man. At some point you gotta give up the blunt force of it and kind of master the thought and the flow of the words. And sometimes it's not even writing a novel. It's just a few well-placed words that expresses your point, not to tell people what to do and not to give people an instructional manual, but just give some people something to think about enough so that they can explore themselves and what right looks like for them.
Absolutely. Hey, Tyler, thank you so much for being here today, man. I really appreciate your time and being able to sit down and just follow along in this abstract journey of a conversation that I think you listening at home will have enjoyed. Dude, I hope you have an amazing day. And for you guys listening, take care and we'll see you all next time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Dan.
If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.